Thank you for joining us at another edition of the Florida Chamber's Bottom Line. I'm Tony Carvajal, the Executive Vice President of the Florida Chamber Foundation, and joining me today is Florida Department of Transportation Secretary Jim Boxell. Thanks for being here, Jim.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Let me start by first commending you on your leadership and the commitment that the governor and the legislature has had to transportation. We've had back-to-back record $10 billion budgets. What's the impact of that kind of investment on Florida?
Well, you know, Florida very clearly is on the move. We're on track for 100 million visitors this year. We've added over 900,000 jobs over the last 4 years, and I think Governor Scott announced last month that Florida's real GDP growth was exceeding the national average. And so as you and the Chamber know, all of those things rely on a good quality transportation infrastructure. We're very fortunate to have a governor and a legislature that recognize that and make those investments. The challenge for the department is to build a transportation infrastructure that meets Florida's needs and keeps up with the pace of growth here in Florida. And then finally, I would say that the biggest challenge we have is to provide that transportation system that is safe for all users, whether you're in a car or on a bicycle or a pedestrian. And so with Florida's year-round weather, you know, it's a lot of challenges that we do our best to keep up with.
Your commitment and the leadership of the governor and the legislature really stands out. I think that it is driving us to the future, as you said. We recently saw Congress and the President agree on a 3-month extension of the federal transportation funding. And I scratched my head. What is the impact of Washington politics on Florida's transportation planning?
Well, it obviously has an impact. And here in Florida, we're fortunate that about 25% of our work program relies on federal funding. So this is another instance where Florida has a great story to tell. I have counterparts across the country that are 80 or 90% federally funded. And so when you have these crises in DC and the different interruptions in federal funding, you know, they start talking about delaying projects or laying off workers. And so in Florida, because the governor and the legislature have diversified the revenue going into our trust fund, we have an opportunity to keep moving forward. I will tell you, in February, the governor and I kicked off the I-4 Ultimate Project, which is a $2.3 billion public-private partnership. We're rebuilding, essentially the backbone of Central Florida. The very same day that we were off announcing that project beginning, there were U.S. DOT officials in Florida, here in Tallahassee and in Jacksonville, talking about America's crumbling infrastructure. And so to me, the difference between what's going on in Florida and what's going on not only in D.C. but in other states is a great story to tell, and I think Florida should tell it more loudly than we have.
It is a great story to tell, that we've got vision and that we're planning for the future. And I know that you're in the middle of updating the Florida Transportation Plan. That's the long-term vision for Florida. How's that going?
It's going very well. I mean, I will tell you that the visioning and the planning that we do is critical to making these projects a success. Most of the projects that are underway today were first started in the planning phase 20 or 30 years ago. You know, and we talk about a $10 billion budget, but every single penny in there matters. And so it matters that we pick the right projects and that we plan them right. And so the whole point of this visioning plan that we're doing is to look 20 and 30 and even further into the future, to take into account advances in technology and really build the best transportation system that we can with the resources we've been provided.
It's been a great partnership over time. Transportation matters to the future of Florida. The business community has been there by your side. But why don't you tell us, what can the business community do for you and the Florida Department of Transportation?
Well, I should start by thanking the Florida Chamber and our partners in the private sector for all that they've done in terms of not only advocating additional resources into the Transportation Trust Fund, making the investments in transportation, but being there as our partner. And I will tell you, at Florida DOT, we rely heavily on the private sector. We don't have a single paving machine. And so our partners in the private sector are critical to our success. So it is a really critical partnership that we have, and I certainly, would encourage the Chamber to continue to be an active voice with the legislature and with others to fund transportation and to make these investments and work on the future of Florida.
I mean, it's a great pleasure to be by your side. And I know you're going to join us at the Future of Florida Forum. We've got another transportation summit coming up at the end of the year. Your leadership is greatly appreciated. Good luck this next year as we go forward.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
And so let me thank you for joining us on another edition of Florida Chamber's Bottom Line.